As of today, Eberron Forge of the Artificer is officially out in early access on D&D Beyond, and with it comes a whole host of new feats, 28 to be exact. So in this video I wanted to go over each of them except for the one epic boon, and as I typically do, tier rank them using the same criteria that I use for each of my feat tier list videos. But there is a bit of additional context that's needed for this one. We have a bunch of what are called Dragonmark feats, which are functionally the same as Origin feats, and then we also got some general feats. The thing is that all of the general feats are improvements on the Dragonmark feats, meaning that they all have prerequisites of taking the earlier matching Dragonmark feat. What this means for us is that when we're ranking the general feats, we need to keep in mind that we can't evaluate them in isolation as if you could just pick any of them at level 4, but rather that the only way to get access to that feat is to have taken the earlier Dragonmark feat, which means that some of the rankings can be a bit tough because of that. If the only way to get a mid-general feat is to take a bad Origin feat, that's not going to be a good look. And even if the only way to get a great feat is to take a bad one, that's also going to hurt a little bit. Okay, as usual, I've put the tier ranking descriptions on screen now, so please do your best to keep them in mind, because otherwise this list is not going to make any sense. This tier list is not a strict power ranking, but more of a gauge about how influential a certain feat may or may not tend to be in most games. For always good, this does not mean that the feat is broken or busted, or even that it's quote-unquote the strongest thing on the list, but rather just that it provides a solid and consistent benefit that can effectively boost any playstyle. Build-defining feats can actually be more or less powerful than always good. The difference is that they tend to be potent enablers of some build or specific playstyle that is also typically considered to be good or effective at most tables. Build-dependent feats serve more of a supporting function. They are probably not the power crux of a build, but if they're picked, they can help bring up the average power level. Niche feats are also not necessarily bad. They can actually be exceptionally good. It's just that the thing that they are doing might be a little bit more niche, and not generally considered as broadly useful or powerful. And bad feats are usually just bad. They're rarely worth taking outside of some incredibly specific build ideas or wombo combos and are generally just not considered to be very good. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get started. Since these are all mini feat ladders or lines, for each we're going to cover the Dragonmark feat and immediately follow it up with the matching general feat so it's fresh in the mind, and we're going to go through all of them alphabetically. So we're going to be starting with the Aberrant Dragonmark. The Aberrant Dragonmark feat, like every feat in this book, does have the prerequisite of being in an Eberron campaign and not having another Dragonmark feat. I'm not going to repeat this for each one. Either way, I suspect a lot of players will probably ignore the Eberron restriction anyway. Oh, and super quick, I'm still trying to see just how close I can get to 25,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and the support recently has been mind-blowing. If you'd like to help me on this quest, subscribing to the channel and clicking the like button while you're there helps way more than you might realize. Thanks. Anyway, Aberrant Dragonmark allows us, when we fail a Constitution saving throw, to use our reaction to add 1d4 to the roll, potentially turning the failure into a success, and we can only do this once per long rest. Also, it allows us to choose any cantrip and level 1 spell from the Sorcerer spell list, and we can cast a level 1 spell once per short or long rest without requiring a spell slot, and then we can use any spell slots that we do have to cast it any more times. And finally, when we cast a level 1 spell, we can then opt to expend one of our hit dice and roll it. If we roll an even number, we gain temporary hit points equal to the number rolled, and if we roll odd, one creature within 30 feet of us takes force damage equal to the number rolled. But if no other creatures are within range, we take the damage instead. This is an interesting feat because at level 1, it's actually offering quite a bit of value. Sure, we can only use Aberrant Fortitude once per long rest, but getting both a free Sorcerer cantrip and level 1 spell can be quite strong. Even a non-spellcaster can actually benefit from this, especially since they made Constitution the spellcasting ability modifier for the spell, which most characters are going to have a pretty reasonable score in. Aberrant Surge might be a little bit sketchy since it's unreliable. You are essentially forced to cast this while you're in combat, otherwise you risk harming yourself or even your allies. But what is cool is that it does scale based on your hit die. I don't think this is broken or busted by any means, but I do think it offers enough potential value as an Origin feat to justify being dropped in Always Good. Then at level 4, we can potentially take the upgrade, Greater Aberrant Mark. This increases our Constitution by 1, which is not only potentially good for our hit points, but also for our spellcasting ability modifier for the spells that we chose. It also changes the bonus that we got for rolling a failed Constitution saving throw from a d4 to a d6, and we can now regain the use of our Aberrant Fortitude on a short or long rest. And on top of that, when we cast a cantrip, notably it can be any cantrip, not just the one that we chose for the Origin feat, we can opt to spend 1 or 2 of our unexpended hit dice and roll them. we then gain temporary hit points equal to the number rolled plus our constitution modifier, and one creature within 30 feet of ourselves, not including us, takes force damage equal to the number rolled. We can do this a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest. So there's kind of a lot to unpack here. Improved Fortitude is legitimately very good. Sometimes Constitution saving throws can be so critical to make, especially if we're a spellcaster concentrating on a spell. So getting a d6 bonus is very nice. And especially now with this one, since we can recover it on a short rest as well. The thing about Mark of Inspiration though is that even though we can't hit ourselves, it could still force us to target an ally and deal damage if no enemy is within 30 feet, which is a bit of a tougher sell. I'm also unsure why it needed to be limited to proficiency bonus times per long rest when it already has an inherent resource limitation of using our hit dice, so that just feels a bit unnecessary and strange. Now again, keep in mind that we need to have taken the Aberrant Dragonmark feat to be able to do this, so the question becomes, as it will for each of these feats, do I want to, or is there just something else that's better? I think this is actually pretty good, and can function as a solid temporary hit point engine, not that 2024 needs any more of those. But the risk involved does make it a little bit sketchier, so I'm going to put it in build dependent, as the right setup can help to mitigate the risk. Alright, next up is Mark of Detection, and this feat, like all of the others, has the exact same structure, so I'm going to go over it now. We get a bonus to a skill check, some always prepared spells that we can cast once for free per long rest, and also cast them using any spell slots that we do have. Also, we will very often get another spell at level 3, though there are some exceptions which I will point out, and if we have the spellcasting or pact magic feature, we get some additional spells that are added to our spell list. Keep in mind that it's not just for this feat, but for all of them. The additional spells are not always prepared, they are just added to our spell list and are available to be chosen. I'm not saying this as if it's bad, I just want to keep it in mind because it is a very critical distinction and will also save me a ton of time for not having to repeat this every single time. So remember that I'm not going to be repeating this for every feat because otherwise the video would take like 6 months to get through. Okay, so for Mark of Detection, we get a bonus d4 to Investigation and Insight, we get Detect Magic and Detect Poison and Disease, and at level 3, we get See Invisibility. As far as the spell list goes, there's some great ones on here, like Find Traps. That's obviously a joke. But actually, Detect Thoughts, Arcane Eye, and Divination, they're all really good spells. Mark of Detection is fine. There's nothing here that's a standout and letting you do something incredible, so it's going in build dependent since it could serve a wide variety of classes without also feeling compelled to be picked, without being so niche that it also does have some reasonable merit. With Greater Mark of Detection, like every single other one of the general feats, the structure here is also the same. We get an increase to an ability of our choice, it upgrades the d4 benefit from one of our skill bonuses to a d6, and then gives us some other perk. The third portion, that additional perk, is where we'll spend most of the time talking about, unless the skill upgrade is really worthy of note. So, with Greater Mark of Detection, we can increase an ability of our choice by 1, it upgrades our d4 on Insight and Investigation checks to a d6, and makes it so that when we use the magical detection benefit from our Mark of Detection feat to cast See Invisibility for free, we can choose one creature within 30 feet of ourselves and also give them the benefit of the spell. This is super niche. Keep in mind that it only works on the once per long rest use of the spell which we casted for free, and not even on any subsequent uses that we cast with a spell slot. This feat is just gonna drop into bad. In the exact right moment where you are fighting an invisible enemy, you happen to be close to an ally, and you have your free use left, it'll be dope. But I don't think this is worth sinking an entire feat choice into. Next up is Mark of Finding, which gives us a d4 on Perception and Survival checks. Both of these are pretty good, but especially Perception. Finder's Magic also gives us Hunter's Mark, and at level 3 we get Locate Object. On the spell list, the standard options are Longstrider, Divination, and probably Commune with Nature. As far as this feat goes, it's not great. Hunter's Mark still has the steep cost of requiring concentration. So maybe if you're a fighter and don't have anything else to concentrate on, having a once per day Hunter's Mark isn't awful. Locate Objects is a pretty solid spell. Overall though, I think Mark of Finding is going into niche. It just isn't offering enough value when there are far more impactful origin feats that you can take. So with that, let's see if the upgraded Greater Mark of Finding that also required us to take Mark of Finding is any better. And spoilers, it's not. With it, we can increase any ability score by 1, the d4 bonus to our Perception and Survival checks does go up to a d6, but the real meat here is Improved Finding, which makes it so that when we cast Hunter's Mark for free, the range of the spell is doubled, making it 180 feet, and prevents the creature from being able to benefit from the invisible condition. This is just bad. Once per day, we can use our mid-spell slightly farther and get a turbo circumstantial and largely trivial benefit that we also had to kind of guess about whether or not it was going to even work. Yes, you can potentially pass around the Hunter's Mark after the creature dies, so maybe something will try and go invisible and you'll be like, got him! But I don't think that's happening a lot. This is just a bad feat. Before we move on, this video is sponsored by DSCRYB, the tool that has absolutely everything that a Dungeon Master needs to really ramp up their games to the next level when it comes to immersion. DSCRYB offers music, sound effects, descriptions, maps, and even their full scene builder, Opus, to put it all together and to play with a single click, which has also just received a massive update. Whether you're playing in person or online, DSCRYB and Opus can be an invaluable tool to make your sessions feel that much more alive. Plus, they've got a ton of great Eberron and Noir type descriptions too, and the best part of it is that none of it was created with AI. So check out DSCRYB using my link in the description or the pinned comment below, and use my code INSIGHTCHECK to double the length of your free trial from 2 weeks to a full month. Thanks again to DSCRYB for sponsoring this video. Moving on, we have Mark of Handling, which gives us a bonus D4 on nature and animal handling checks, and gives us Animal Friendship and Speak with Animals Always Prepared. At level 3, instead of getting another spell, we can instead target a monstrosity with Speak with Animals or Animal Friendship, provided that monstrosity has an intelligence of 3 or lower. Now, I took the liberty of checking all of the monsters that have been updated for 2024. I know that you can still use older creatures, I just didn't want to go through everything. But the updated 2024 ones that meet this criteria are Axebeaks, Basilisks, Flying Snakes, Giant Axebeaks, Griffins, and the Young Remoras. That's it. So there's not a ton, but I mean, there's not zero either. Maybe some of the flying or burrowing creatures could be pretty beneficial. As far as the expanded spell list goes, the best options here are definitely going to be Command, Find Familiar, and Conjure Animals. I don't think there's anything particularly incredible here, but it's at least interesting and enables something that isn't typically possible, that being using the spells on monstrosities. So it's not terrible either. I'm tempted to drop it in niche, but I think it's interesting and unique enough, and the spell list is also good enough to just narrowly put it into build dependent. There's probably some pretty fun things that you can do with this. With Greater Mark of Handling, we can get a +1 to any ability score of our choice, and the bonus to our nature and animal handling checks increases to a D6. Then we get a few other interesting perks here. Improved Handling makes it so that when we are mounted and hit a target within 5 feet of our mount with a melee attack, our mount can take a reaction to move up to its speed, or take the attack action to make one attack. We get to choose. This is actually pretty cool. I don't really mess with mounted combat, but I know a lot of people do, and this has a ton of potential power embedded in it for a mounted build. But that's not all. As a magic action, we can target a beast or monstrosity within 30 feet of ourselves and subject them to a wisdom saving throw, failing which they are frightened until the start of our next turn, and we can do that a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest. I think Greater Mark of Handling is actually quite strong and can absolutely be worth it for some kind of mounted combat or beast controller build, and legitimately sounds super fun. I'm dropping this one into build defining. The biggest downside is that the Dragonmark feature is definitely a bit more questionable. Moving on to Mark of Healing, which gives us a D4 bonus to our medicine and herbalism kit checks, and gives us the Cure Wound spell, and at level 3 gives us Lesser Restoration. On the spell list, the best choices here are going to be Healing Word, Arcane Vigor, and Aura of Vitality, which is hilariously broken with the new circle casting mechanic if you're using that in your games. This feature is fine. I think the best way to get value out of this is if you're a wizard or something that doesn't typically have access to a ton of great healing options. With this, it significantly opens up that opportunity for you and increases the depth of your spell list, which is very nice to see. I think the feat's fine. It's nothing earth-shattering, but it's not totally outside of the realm of consideration. I think it can go in build dependent, and as I said, serve to help a caster that is looking to gain access to a little bit more healing. Looking at Greater Mark of Healing, it allows us to increase an ability of our choice by 1, ups the bonus on our herbalism and medicine checks to a D6, and makes it so that we can now cast Cure Wounds a number of times per long rest, equal to our proficiency bonus without expending a spell slot. Additionally, it makes it so that we can treat any roll of those healing dice from Cure Wounds that were a 1 or a 2 as a 3. It's important to note that this effect works even when we are not casting the free version, so it does apply with upcasting as well. Even still though, I think this is barely, if at all, worth the feat. I'm going to drop this into niche and not into bad, because it does come with quite a few free casts of Cure Wounds, which is pretty nice, but you really need to want exactly that to make this worth taking. Next up is the Mark of Hospitality, which gives us a D4 bonus to persuasion checks and checks using brewer supplies or cook's utensils. It also gives us Purify Food and Drink and Unseen Servant Always Prepared, and at level 3 gives us Calm Emotions. The spell list does have some very good options, including Goodberry, Sleep, Aid, and Liamon's Tiny Hut. Despite the fact that this feat is beyond incredibly flavorful, I love what it's doing, the reality is that there's just way better feats to choose pretty much regardless of what character you're going for. So as fun as this might be, it's such a hard sell. I am gonna put it into niche, but like just barely on the cusp of bad. The only thing saving this is the fact that it has a pretty respectable expanded spell list, but even then, this is so narrowly avoiding being dropped into bad. As for the Greater Mark of Hospitality, we can increase an ability of our choice by 1, and our Persuasion and Brewer Supplies and Cook's Utensils checks increase to a d6. Sweet. Also, whenever we cast Purify Food and Drink, we can modify it and choose any creatures within 30 feet and reduce their exhaustion level by 1 and give them temporary hit points equal to our proficiency bonus plus our intelligence, wisdom, or charisma modifier, whichever we picked when we chose the feat. And we can do this once per long rest. So just to be clear, you need to take a ludicrously questionable origin feat to be able to get a ludicrously questionable general feat, and that requires that you are both casting a very circumstantial spell and that you, or multiple of you, are exhausted. This is a bad feat. Next up we have Mark of Making, which gives a d4 bonus to our Arcana checks and checks using Artisan's tools. It also gives us Mending and Magic Weapon Always Prepared. Notably though, this feat does not give us any upgrade when we reach level 3. Presumably, the reason for this is that it already gave us access to a second level spell straight away at level 1 in the form of Magic Weapon, which is quite solid to get access to immediately. On the spell list, the best options are probably Spiritual Weapon and Conjure Barrage. I think this one goes into build dependent. Having access to an early cast of Magic Weapon, way before you likely have +1 weapons, can boost a wide variety of characters. Plus, if you're in a lower magic campaign, the value here can increase even more. It might not be flashy, but it's really not bad. Greater Mark of Making lets us increase any ability score of our choice by 1, and increases the bonus on our Arcana and Artisan's Tools checks to a d6. On top of that, it makes it so that when we use the free cast of Magic Weapon, we can cast it as if it were the level 3 version for free, which essentially makes it a +2 magic weapon. In a very specific low magic campaign, kind of like I mentioned earlier, this can be really good. It does also admittedly come online well before most campaigns are giving access to +2 weapons, so I mean there's that, but it's hard to see this really going anywhere but niche. Moving on, we have Mark of Passage, which does break up the trend a little bit. This one does give us a bonus d4 to our athletics and acrobatics checks, but also increases our speed by 5 feet. While 5 feet isn't a ton, gaining essentially any free access to an increase in mobility has the potential to be incredibly strong, especially since it can stack with bonuses from other feats, classes, or species. Again, it might not be flashy, but it's very good. Additionally, it also gives us the Misty Step spell, another level 2 spell that we can have right away at level 1. On top of that, this spell list is absolutely juiced with Jump, Find Steed, Pass Without Trace, Phantom Steed, and Dimension Door. I have no idea who designed this feat or why they decided it needed to be so much better than all the rest of them, but here we are. This just offers so much utility and mobility, it's easily going in always good. As for Greater Mark of Passage, it's not quite as exciting, which is probably a good thing to be totally honest, since it would just make this line way too good. Anyway, here we get the usual bump to our bonus on athletics and acrobatics checks to a d6, which is good since these are both fairly common checks to make throughout play. It also lets us, when we use our ability to cast Misty Step for free, to choose up to 2 willing creatures within 30 feet. Each must use their reaction and can then teleport to an unoccupied space within 30 feet that we can see. This, while not bad, is just a bit on the more niche side of things that I'm not as confident that it's worth taking an entire feat for, since it also applies only on the free cast, still requires them to be fairly close, also use a reaction, and the destination needs to be somewhere that we can see, not somewhere that they can see. All that adds up to a reasonably niche feat, but I'm sure there's some ways to make it pretty fun. Moving on, Mark of Scribing gives us a bonus d4 to our history checks and checks using calligrapher's supplies. It also gives us Message and Comprehend Languages Always Prepared, and at level 3 we get Magic Mouth. For the spell list, it's not great. Command is definitely the best pick, Sending is good, Silence is alright, and Confusion is good. It's a bit all over the place really. Honestly, I was super tempted to drop this into bad, but I think the only thing keeping it into niche is the bonus with calligrapher's supplies being good if you were particularly committed to crafting spell scrolls. So for that reason, I'm just narrowly gonna drop this into niche. Looking at the upgrade in Greater Mark of Scribing, we get all the standards. We can increase an ability score of our choice by 1, the bonus on our history and calligrapher's supplies checks increases to a d6, and when we cast Comprehend Languages, we can choose up to 3 willing creatures within 30 feet to all gain the benefit of the spell. Additionally, we all then gain the ability to communicate telepathically for the duration of Comprehend Languages. There's some real niche applicability to something like this, despite how good telepathy can be. It's still limited to 3 people and to when you cast Comprehend Languages. This is something that I find hard to warrant sacrificing a feat choice for, especially when you already had to have taken Mark of Scribing to get here. This is a bad feat. Next up we have Mark of the Sentinel, which gives us a D4 bonus to our insight and perception checks, both of which are extremely common in most games. Also, notably not at level 3 and just right away, when a creature that we can see within 5 feet of us gets hit with an attack roll, we can use our reaction to swap places with the creature and be hit by the attack instead. We can use this a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest. As for the spells, the standouts are probably Shield of Faith, Counterspell, and maybe Bigby's Hand. I have some questions about Vigilant Guardian though. Mainly, my question is, are we actually automatically hit even if the attack would not hit our AC? The wording reads, and you are hit with the attack instead. By that, I would imagine that we are hit no matter what, which is a bit strange. In any case, this is still a very cool feature that can be incredibly useful for some tanky and high defensive builds. So for that reason, it's going into build defining. It can also be good if you are a spellcaster like a cleric or druid that just doesn't have access to shield innately. Greater Mark of the Sentinel also allows us to increase an ability score of our choice by 1 and increases the bonus on our insight and perception checks to a d6. But more importantly, it also makes it so that when we use our Vigilant Guardian feature, we can also make one weapon or unarmed strike as part of the same reaction. This is very good and works so well with the base Mark of the Sentinel to the point that it's one of the few feat lines here that legitimately feels worth following. There are definitely builds that can easily capitalize on this by gaining an almost proactive way to use a reaction. This is a build defining feat as well. Moving on, we are looking at Mark of the Shadow, which gives us a d4 bonus on stealth and performance checks. Stealth checks can often be some of the more impactful, but also one of the more common checks to make in a lot of scenarios. Additionally, it gives us both Minor Illusion and the invisibility spell Always Prepared. This is again one of the feats that does not give us an upgrade at level 3, because it does already give us a level 2 spell for free straight away at level 1. The spell list is okay. Mainly Pass Without Trace, Greater Invisibility, and Silent Image. Here's the thing with Mark of Shadow. I don't think it's busted. I really don't. But the bonus to stealth checks and gaining the invisibility spell for free at level 1 is really hard to overlook as not being very strong, to the point that I am tempted to drop this straight into Always Good. Again, not because it's broken, but because the benefits it offers are so consistently strong and likely valuable in a wide variety of games and situations. And as has been the trend, whenever there's a very good origin feat, the follow-up feat in the line is just bad. Greater Mark of Shadow lets us increase an ability of our choice by 1 and increases the bonus on our stealth and performance checks to a d6. Finally, it makes it so that whenever we use the free casting of invisibility, we can treat it as if it's being cast at level 3. So essentially, we can target one additional creature. Despite how good the Dragonmark feat may have been, this is absolutely not worth taking. A once per long rest free upcast of invisibility is just an investment that's not worth making. This is a bad feat. Next up we have Mark of Storms, which gives us a bonus d4 to our acrobatics checks and checks with Navigator's tools. It also gives us resistance to lightning damage and the Thunderclap cantrip, and at level 3 we get Gust of Wind. The spell list here is quite strong, letting us add Levitate, Shatter, Sleet Storm, and the Goat conjure minor elementals, which obviously has become less good since the errata addressing the insane scaling of the spell, but it's still quite strong. This is another one that I am willing to put straight into Always Good because it offers a reasonable bonus to a fairly common check, an okay spell, a good list, but most importantly, a free resistance is just great. As I've talked about before, despite lightning not being one of the most prevalent damage types dealt by monsters in the game, when it does hit, it tends to have high damage output, which does make this pretty valuable. And as if on command, when we have a good, we must have something not so good to keep the balance. Greater Mark of Storm lets us increase an ability score of our choice by 1, and increases the bonus on our acrobatics and navigator's tools checks to a d6. And whenever we use our once per long rest benefit to cast Gust of Wind, we get a fly speed of 60 feet. Now, I am extremely tempted to drop this into bad, but I have to give a solid fly speed a little bit more respect than that, especially since this could technically come online even earlier than the fly spell itself. So for that reason, I'm going to put this into niche, but I think there are way better options to choose from this point than just continuing to follow the storm line. And our final Dragonmark feat is the Mark of Warding. This one gives us a bonus d4 to our investigation and thieves tools checks, both of which can be quite good. Additionally, it also gives us the alarm spell and mage armor Always Prepared with a free cast, and at level 3 we get Arcane Lock. The standouts on the spell list are probably Armor of Agathis, Nistel's Magic Aura, and Glyph of Warding. I think each of these bonuses, while not insane on their own, adds up to a pretty compelling value proposition for a lot of characters, but I will still drop it into build dependent, since despite investigation being fairly common, Thieves Tools is definitely a lot more dependent, as are the spells that you're going to be casting. Not everyone can even really take advantage of Mage Armor, for example. As for greater mark of warding, it allows us to increase an ability score of our choice by 1, increases the bonus on our investigation and thieves tools checks to a d6, and makes it so that whenever a creature makes an attack roll against us or a creature that we can see within 30 feet of ourselves, we can use our reaction to impose disadvantage on the roll, and we can do that a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest. This is really good, and again can be used quite well for a tank or highly defensive build. It's going in build defining. And the final feat that we're going to cover in this video is the Potent Dragonmark. While it does not require that we took any specific Dragonmark feat, it still does require that we took at least one of them. When we take this feat, it increases the ability score of the Dragonmark feat that we took by 1, and additionally, it makes it so that we have all of the spells on our Spells of the Mark feature always prepared, not just adding to our potential spell list. And finally, it gives us an extra spell slot to cast any of the spells that were granted by our Dragonmark feat, or the general feats as well. The spell level of the slot is equal to half of our level, rounded up, to a maximum level of 5, and we can regain the spell slot whenever we finish a short or long rest. This is a very strong feat. Gaining the entire list of the various spells prepared always is great, especially since it could even let non-spellcasters cast any of the spells with the ritual tag, since the only requirement for ritual casting is just to have the spell prepared, which this would do. Free spell slots is also never something to be upset about, especially ones that come back on a short rest. Sounds even better if you're a warlock too. This is definitely going in always good. Overall, these feats are kind of a mixed bag. There's a lot of niche or even outright bad options on the list, but that is mostly not helped by the fact that some of the greater feats are being gated behind some kind of bad origin feats to start with, which just makes them so much harder to justify. And it's hard to call them feat trees, but these feat lines that we're seeing are apparently becoming more common, and while I get the concept, I'm just not really sure that it ends up working all that well. Anyway, that's all that I got. Let me know your thoughts on the new Eberron feats. Check out some of my other videos, but otherwise, take care.